I have read a few reports where we talk about a proficiency gap, and the proficiency gap is between 30 to 40%, where professionals have those credentials, but then the applied expertise to drive business outcomes, that's what is missing. To showcase more than the certifications that you have, nowadays candidates are showing the impact that they have created in the business, the ROI from the projects they have worked on where they have applied their skills. These are the ones that is creating more importance.
Here's an interesting story. Two candidates walk into an interview. One has a stellar pedigree, big college, big brands, impressive titles. The other has built things, solved messy problems, and can show clear business outcomes. 10 years ago, the choice was obvious. Today, it's not. Because the definition of valuable talent has quietly shifted from where you have been to what impact you can actually create. And nowhere is this shift more visible than in senior and executive hiring. Welcome to another episode of Hired, where we understand what really makes talent valuable in today's workplace. Today, we explore from skills to impact what actually makes talent valuable today. To unpack this shift, I'm joined by Abhilash George, business head, high value search at Randstad India. Abhilash operates at the very sharp end of leadership and executive hiring, working closely with CXOs, boards, and senior decision makers to identify talent that just doesn't fit roles but drives revenue, shapes strategy, and creates measurable business impact. With over 2 decades of experience across executive search, advisory consulting, and market intelligence and leadership hiring, he has seen firsthand how the markers of top talent have evolved from pedigree and titles to capability, ownership, and outcomes. Abhilash, it's a pleasure to have you on Hired.
Thank you very much, Biswajit, for having me on board, and it is a pleasure to be engaged with Hired.
Welcome, Abhilash. Don't worry, we'll not be evaluating you for a role today unless you say something very impressive. Okay, so before we begin our discussion, is there anything that you'd like to share before we
I'm
start on with the
just good
conversation?
with this opportunity to engage with you because the topics that you actually spoke about are
Right.
the core truth about the industry. Because when we engage with the decision makers, let it be the founders or the senior most management team, it is no longer about a job description and a hire. It is all about strategizing and creating their growth journey where we provide them with the right set of people to help them achieve their ambitions and the growth plans. So, yes, what you said initially about where the shift is going to, you're exactly right. And that's exactly what majority of the clients or majority of the decision makers are actually looking for. And honestly, that is not just at the senior level, even mid-level people are being evaluated on that same aspect.
Wonderful. I'd love to hear more such insights from you. Hence, I'll begin with our very first point, the very first point of our conversation, which is on pedigree versus value. So, let me start with say for the longest time, top talent was easy to spot on paper, big college, big brands, big titles. From what you are seeing today, is that definition breaking down?
Definitely, it is breaking down because what used to happen 10 years ago, MBA from a tier one or a IIT degree used to be the benchmark.
Right.
Now, it is more like a qualifier, but no longer the benchmark because what the industry is doing right now is moving from a pedigree led ecosystem to a performance proven hiring ecosystem. Traditionally, having a degree from a tier one institute or having an MBA degree is merely just a entry point. The real value lies in the candidate's problem solving footprint. So, if I have to kind of elaborate more on that, nowadays the major shift that I'm seeing, and on that too on both the sides. So, if I talk about the candidate side, majority of the candidates are now evolving from just giving the pedigree name or the designation that they have achieved or the qualifications that they have achieved versus the certifications. And now what they are on to is they are explaining the projects they have done, the impact they have created in that role, the ROI they have derived, and that has become the core of majority of the CVs. And if I look at the client end, yes, as I said earlier, it is just an entry point. But most of the clients are now going for scenario based assessments, case studies, throwing on spot problems to see if the candidate is able to think on their foot. These are the impacts and the differences that we are seeing if you compare 10 years ago versus now.
That's quite interesting because it almost sounds like that the resume has become the starting point, not the decision point anymore. Like what you are describing is a shift from, let's say, credentials to evidence, uh, from from where you have worked to what you have actually done there. And I'm guessing that this becomes even more visible at senior level where outcomes matter more than designations. It's almost like pedigree opens the door, but the impact decides whether someone stays in the room or not. uh, the great, fantastic start. So I'll move on to our next point of conversation, which is on, let's say, we can talk about certifications versus capability. So, we are seeing so many professionals add certifications, AI courses, new tools to their profiles. From your lens, how do you tell the difference between someone who has learned a skill and someone who can actually apply it?
So, if I have to distinguish between, let's say, someone who has just passed the test versus someone who is capable to do the job, well, that particular portion has become a challenge that has been intensified with the rise of AI. When someone lists AI certifications, they are just showing intent and familiarity. But the capability is defined based on their ability to apply these tools in a messy, real world problem like situation.
Right.
So that's where the major difference lies. In fact, I have read a few reports where we talk about a proficiency gap, and the proficiency gap is between, let's say, 30 to 40%, where professionals have those credentials, but then the applied expertise to drive business outcomes, that's what is missing. And that's where I said earlier, to showcase more than the certifications that you have. Nowadays, candidates are showing the impact that they have created in the business, the ROI from the projects they have worked on where they have applied their skills. These are the ones that is creating more importance.
I really like that distinction because, let's say, let's say on LinkedIn today, everyone can look equally future ready. But what you're hinting at is that application leaves clues. The way someone explains problems, the way connect dots, the way they talk about outcomes. It's less about the course they took up and more about the stories that they can tell. And almost like the capability shows up in thinking patterns and not just bullet points, which brings me to the next point of our discussion, which is on tools versus domain background. So let's say if AI is now showing up with roles that had nothing to do with tech earlier, do you feel that we are entering a phase where the ability to use, let's say, tools smartly is becoming more important than a deep domain background?
Interesting question, this one. So, what I understand is we are entering a phase where the tool plus context combination is just the gold standard.
Right.
But a tool in the hands of someone without domain expertise is just a faster way to make mistakes. In a world of Gen AI, where the cost of doing has dropped to nearly zero, but the cost of knowing what to do, has skyrocketed its value in India. When AI handles the execution, the human provides the intent, context, and verification. Without, a domain background and with just knowing the skills, it is more like a pilot who does not know how to navigate. They can definitely go fast, but they don't know where they are supposed to land the plane. And if I look at the domains that you were speaking about, AI is definitely disrupting domains like HR, legal, supply chain. But then the winner isn't the person who knows the AI tool the best, but the domain expert who knows which problem or maybe a business problem that the tool can actually solve. I hope that answers your question.
No, no, absolutely. And also the pilot analogy lands really well. You can like fly very fast with these tools, but if you don't know where you're supposed to land, speed actually becomes dangerous. What you're saying is that the combination of tools plus context is the real gold standard now, because AI has made execution cheap, but knowing what to execute has become incredibly valuable. So it's not the best AI user who wins, it's the domain expert who understands which business problem the tool should even be applied to. And that's a very different way to think about future ready talent. But since we are also at talking about talent, let's talk on let's weigh on talent shortage versus quality concentration. So I wanted to ask that we keep hearing about talent shortage a lot, um, but we also hear leaders say that a small percentage of people drive most of the value. So is the problem really scarcity, or is it that truly high quality talent is very concentrated?
I would say neither actually. India as a whole has a quantity surplus, but a quality deficit. So
Okay.
let me kind of get a little bit deeper in that. So there was
Sure.
a NASSCOM Zenov report that had come out, which indicates that 60% of the demand supply gap is specialized in high impact roles. And this isn't because people are missing, it is because the right skills are concentrated in the top 5 to 10% of the workforce. So that small percentage is called high impact talent, and that talent is actually driving close to 80% of the value in GCCs and tech hubs. So that is the way I would define that answer.
That reframes the whole debate actually, because if it's concentration and not shortage, then the hiring challenge is very difficult. It's about identifying, attracting, and retaining that small percentage who create disproportionate impact. Mm, which probably explains why executive search today is less about filling roles and more about finding outliers.
I can just cite a few examples. So we do
Sure,
get
sure,
a
sure.
lot
Please,
of
please.
mandates from clients where we know what they're actually looking for. And if you look at things on paper, yes, there is a complete job fitment. But then we at Randstad India make it a point, we do a detailed assessment of the candidate. If required, we even employ a very skilled panel to ensure that the candidate, whatever is saying, also carries it along with it so that we don't believe in quality quantity. What we believe in quality going across to our client so that when they see the profile, they know the skills are there, but when the candidate is sitting in front of them, it's not only about the skills, it's about what can they do with the tools, what problem they can fix, how can they improve things for the client, how can they build the growth journey not as a employee but as a partner with the client. And that's what all clients are looking for.
That's a very important distinction you're making, because this is happening even before the candidate reaches the client. The assessment is uh, not just does this person match with the job description, but can this person actually solve clients problems. It almost sounds like you're filtering for thinking, not just fitment. And I really like the phrase you used, like moving from being seen as an employee to being evaluated as a partner in the growth journey. That tells us a lot about what organizations are truly today. And I'll move on to our next point of conversation, more companies now say that people who think in terms of outcomes and business impact. Are you seeing any real shift to real shift towards hiring for ownership and a P&L mindset even beyond leadership roles?
Definitely, Biswajit. So earlier there was a time where it was just management, or if you want to call it in simple terms, more like a taskmaster.
Right.
Now, the taskmaster word has gone out of the window, and what companies are actually looking at is outcome owners. And this is just not in senior levels. If I have to look at, let's say, the 50 lakh band onwards, so that obviously falls the mid management, right? Even
Hmm.
at the mid management level, the most common question that I see coming across to candidates are, how does your work affect the bottom line? So even if you look at the online statistics, I would say there is almost a 40 to 45% year on year surge, that the demand is highly skewed towards leaders who can manage P&L and navigate complex business outcomes. And it is just not concentrated at the senior leadership or the CXO level. It begins from the mid management. So let's say every engineer or every marketeer, they just don't join companies nowadays to do their job or where their skill lies. It's also about the mindset that they carry, where they can get that operational efficiency and kind of in future manage P&Ls, come with a P&L mindset, come with a growth mindset. That is what clients are actually looking for.
That's quite fascinating, because it means companies are looking for mini entrepreneurs within the organization. And like you rightly said, you don't use the term taskmaster anymore. So as I said, mini entrepreneurs or intrapreneurship, as the term has become popular these days. So people who don't just execute tasks but think, how does this move the business? It also changes how performance is evaluated. Less activity, more impact. And I imagine this mindset is becoming a big differentiator when you assess mid to senior talent. So that's why I'll move on to quickly to our last point of conversation. Which is on, like, let's say, what gets commoditized versus what stays valuable. So as AI keeps evolving and reshaping roles, what do you see becoming commoditized in terms of skills, and what will remain truly valuable for professionals who want to stay relevant?
I would say things like basic coding, data entry, routine reporting, content drafting, these are the skills getting commoditized.
Right.
If a machine can actually do it in 10 seconds, your value doing it is actually zero. But then what remains really valuable is the contextual judgment, empathy, stakeholder influence, complex problem solving skills, forecasting problems, defining the growth journey.
Right.
These are skills that will remain and are truly valuable.
That's a very sharp way to look at it. Like, if a machine can do something in 10 seconds, the value of human doing it is practically zero. So which really forces people to rethink where they spend their time and effort. And what you're pointing to on the other side, judgment, empathy, influence, complex problem solving skills, these are deeply human capabilities that don't show up as skills on a certificate, but make all the difference in real work. It almost brings us back to the idea that the future of value lies more in how people think and navigate situations than in the tasks that they perform. But overall, Abhilash, this was such a refreshing conversation. I think you have helped us move the idea of valuable talent away from resumes and much closer to real impact and real thinking. Before we part, would you like to share something for our audience?
In fact, this was definitely an interesting conversation, Biswajit, because what we spoke right now is actually the ground reality, what actually happens during an interview process. There are situations where, even after having skills, people are getting rejected, but they don't understand why that happened. But I hope this conversation may help over there so that they are better prepared for the future.
Really well said, Abhilash, and thank you for sharing such honest and on ground perspectives from the executive search world. I'm sure a lot of people listening will see their own careers a little differently after this. So, thank you again. Thank you for your time. To our viewers, if this conversation made you pause, reflect, and understand the nuances of adding value to your role, then I guess we have done a good job. We'll be back with another episode of H.I.R.E.D, decoding what goes on in the world of work. Till then, stay hungry, stay curious, and do wait for our next episode at H.I.R.E.D.